This painting here, this painting surface to be precise, is one of the most satisfying and gratifying things that I did this year. But at the same time, it's also one of the most frustrating, annoying, and disappointing things that I did this year. It all really started with one very simple idea or question. Why does a painting surface always need to be square or rectangular? Because if you think about it, there is no real good reason other for it being maybe the most simple and convenient solution to the problem. But I had the idea and I just thought, what would happen if I changed the shape of the painting surface? And can I do that and use it to my advantage to create something that's maybe even better than it otherwise would be? So, for example, underline some aspects of the painting or enhance certain effects that I want to achieve with the painting. So that's what I tried to do. And unfortunately, I have to confess that this version here that you are seeing is pretty close to what I had in mind, but still kind of disappointing, kind of a letdown, but we'll get there. One thing after another. So earlier this year, I knew that I had an exhibition coming up. And whenever I have a new solo exhibition, there's always like a small part of the exhibition that I like to use to make something completely new, completely innovative, at least for me, that I haven't done before, that I haven't tried before. And this year, for this exhibition, it was these organic vector shape canvases. Very simple and very straightforward, seemingly. But until I got to this point, which I gotta emphasize is still not really satisfying to me, it took me so many weeks and so many hours of work, it's not even funny. Initially, I wanted this painting surface here to be like a regular old canvas. Same build-up, same structure. You have your wooden stretcher bars, and then on top of it, you have your stretched canvas or cotton that you either prime, or you can also use like a pre-primed canvas. But that was the initial idea. I went out, I talked to the carpenter that I work with regularly, and we came up with a very simple prototype that I could use. At that point, I was very, very excited because it looked like everything was going exactly the way I wanted to. So I got the prototype and I started the process of trying stuff out, stretching the canvas, stretching the cotton or the fabric on top of the stretcher bars, etc., etc. But then it turns out the thing that I initially wanted to do is not really possible.
Can someone help me out here? I have this strangely shaped canvas and I need to stretch it, but I honestly have no idea how I can properly deal with these inside curves here. Does anyone have any ideas? It feels a bit like a math problem, to be honest. So if there are any like mathematicians or topologists or anything out there that can help me, that would be amazing. I don't want to cut into this thing too much because obviously I don't want any of this here, but I also don't want, you know, all of the creases here. I feel like it should be possible, and I'm pretty sure that I've seen plenty of canvases like this in the past. I just don't know how.
Well, thank you all for all your suggestions. I really appreciate it. I'm still working on it. Still haven't figured it out, I have to admit, but I am very determined. Now, this is the best I could do for now, but unfortunately, if you look at it from the other side, you can see there are some creases here, and we don't want that. So, yeah, back to the drawing board, and somehow I gotta figure this out. The moment you try to stretch your fabric on these curved shapes, you have these concave and convex shapes, it's almost impossible to do without creating creases and folds. And it took me a long time to accept the fact that it doesn't really work. But after probably 3 weeks, every day trying out, I kind of came to accept that what I had in mind was probably, impossible. because I tried everything I could think of, everything I could come up with, every material combination I could think of to stretch the canvas on top of this curved stretcher bar, and I just couldn't make it work. There was always one issue. Either it was creases, or it was that I couldn't stretch it, or too many folds. There was something, always something. So what I eventually had to do was accept that this was probably not going to work, and I had to come up with a plan B. Go back and rethink everything. I talked to my carpenter and we came up with the idea of just having regular wood panels that are cut to this shape and then have them cradled on the back. But the thing with that is, because that was initially actually the first idea I had, but the problem with that and why I didn't want to do that at a very large scale, a wood panel always has the tendency to warp, and it's crazy heavy. It's super heavy. It is very impractical. The warping issue on top of that, especially if you create art that is fairly expensive and people spend money on it, you don't want any of that happening in the future. Warping or this thing falling off the wall or something. I mean, nightmare scenarios. Lots of nightmare scenarios I can think of. But I couldn't come up with a better solution, so that's what I had to do. A lot of trial and error to figure out a way to just get the wood panels working, because also not super straightforward, especially if you're working with software and technology, yada yada yada. All of that was a whole nother problem in and of itself. But we figured it out. We came up with something where I felt like, okay, this looks pretty good, solid, premium. The only thing I had to do then, at that point, was to figure out a way to get the canvas on top of the wood panel. Turns out you can't just, at that size, glue a piece of fabric, soft fabric, onto a wood panel without thinking of a dozen things that you have to keep in mind. You don't want any creases, you don't want any bubbles, don't want it to come off, which was a problem I encountered eventually. I mean, I could have thought of it before, but in the moment, it didn't really come to my mind. So the first tests that I made were complete failures. I just did it the way I would do it with a smaller panel. But at this size, whatever glue it is that you're using, or adhesive, it doesn't need to be like regular glue or anything. I used a pH neutral adhesive that's also used for bookbinding. But the thing is, it dries very quickly. And by the time like you're finished covering your entire surface, one side has already started to dry, and there's a high risk that your canvas will come off at that point. So I treated the wood, I used an acrylic binder, and what that does is it seals the surface, and by sealing the surface you also keep the adhesive from getting soaked up too early and too quickly. I hope it makes sense and it's easy to follow. I know I'm just throwing out words here if you've never used these kinds of materials, but essentially in a nutshell what I did was I sealed the wood so the glue doesn't dry as fast, and then I could put on the canvas and let it dry for a day or sometimes even two. And that was finally the solution that got me close to this point here, to like this painting and this painting surface you can see here. But then, as I already mentioned, canvas has a very certain specific look and feel to it. For lack of a better word, it feels kind of organic. It feels soft. The edges are kind of softened up because, yeah, just the edges of a canvas aren't very sharp. So I needed, or I wanted, to emulate that. Which meant coming up with a way to, almost make the canvas wrap around the edges, at least visually, because it's impossible to do, or I couldn't figure out a way to do it literally. And that also, like finding a way to do that, a proper way to do that, was a whole 3 days of trying stuff out and going through some tests. And it includes a lot of cutting away and sanding and priming and hardening and sanding again, which nobody will ever see except for myself probably. Unfortunately, sadly. So this is not the only canvas that I made in this vector shape organic style. I had a bunch of paintings in this style for my exhibition. And it's something that I felt like I needed to do because I had this idea floating around in my head for many, many years now. And I just waited for the right time to realize the idea. And with this exhibition that I had a couple months ago, I felt like it was the perfect time. But the thing is, I'm at a point right now where I'm still kind of frustrated and unhappy. While I love the end result, don't get me wrong, it is super premium and the canvas is as good as you can make it, I would argue, with these materials and this process. But it is not what I wanted. It's not the thing that I actually wanted. What I wanted was a regular canvas, an organic shaped stretcher bar, and then the canvas wrapped around, because that would allow me to make paintings like this at an even bigger scale. One of the things that I would love to do is make at least a couple paintings with this organic shape painting surface that are maybe a couple meters long or just significantly bigger than what you can see here. And I can only see that happening when I figure out a way to wrap the canvas around stretcher bars to decrease the weight and also completely work around the issue of warping. I would never do it with this wood panel thing, only up to a certain size, because the risk of warping and the heavy weight is just no go, I would say. The only thing is, I don't know if it's possible. I have genuinely no idea. I almost feel like 100% I've seen other artists do something similar, successfully, mind you, but for the life of me, I cannot figure out how. Or if I'm just like imagining it, because the thing is, when I was at Art Basel a couple days before my exhibition, there was actually a painting, and I have a photo of it, where someone tried to do something similar. Canvas, organic shaped canvas, or creative shaped canvas, or custom shaped canvas, whatever you want to call it. But it looked like absolute shit. It looked exactly like all the tests that I did, that I felt like were horrible, atrocious, and cheap looking. No idea how it ends up at Art Basel. Probably also costs like 20, 30, 40K, something like that. But that's a whole nother can of worms. I don't even know at this point if it's possible, or if I was just imagining it, wishful thinking or something, I don't know. If you have any ideas, let me know. Please send me a mail, help me. I need some help with this. I don't think I'm gonna figure it out by myself. But I think it's such a great idea that has so much potential. I don't feel like I've remotely tapped into the potential this concept has. I mean, with this painting here, the Coral Tide painting, it is very close to what I was imagining, because in this case here, I feel like the shape of the canvas actually adds something to the painting. This like bubble-shaped canvas that almost looks like a little pond. It sort of adds thematically and conceptually to the subject of the painting. But again, ideally, I would like to do something that's maybe bigger, maybe a bit more complex, and also ideally on canvas, so it doesn't weigh like dozens and dozens of kilos and is impossible to move around the studio just by yourself. So yeah, some of the other paintings that I did were a bit more conservative. I felt like I could have integrated the whole shape a bit better into the paintings. Or another way of saying this would be that it might not have been necessary to have like such a complex shape to them. But on the other hand, I absolutely love the paintings and I think they turned out absolutely fantastic, so does it even matter? In any case, I would really love to explore this theme, concept, idea a bit further. If you want to see the entire process, the painting process of this coral tide painting, you can head over to Patreon, where you can see essentially every brushstroke. The full painting process video is up there. And yeah, if you have any ideas, if you want to help me out, collaborate on making this happen, I would love to hear from you. And I would also love to hear what you guys think. Does it add something? Does it make the painting better? Is it nice to have but not a must? Can you do without? All that good stuff. So let me know what you think. I'm super excited to get started with the next few paintings. I got some super cool things cooking right now on the stove. So happy holidays, guys, and see you in the new year. Bye.